lipstick. Hello, I need to reapply my kind of sexy lipstick so that I am kinda sexy. And we're gonna top it off with a little glossy gloss. No, I think, aside from the eye boogers, don't you love those? I'm ready. Let's get rolling.
Hi everyone, how is everybody doing? I am so excited to be doing this video. This is going to be my very first tag. Samantha March and Ali Glines here on YouTube, two fantastic ladies that I love to watch and that I will make sure to link down below, did an eyeshadow tag based off of, I think, something that's been going around on TikTok. I am not cool enough or young enough or hip enough or funny enough for TikTok. But basically, Samantha March and Ali Glines took this idea off of TikTok and created a YouTube tag. And I decided I want to do my first tag. And I wanted to be about eyeshadow palettes because I love eyeshadow palettes. I have a ton of eyeshadow palettes. That was your little preview into some of the ones we're going to be talking about today. So yeah, if you would like to hear my answers to this eyeshadow tag that's been going around and burning up the internet, it's really taken off and I think a ton of people have done it and I didn't want to feel left out. You know, FOMO, it's a real thing. So if you want to hear my answers, keep on watching. Okay, we're gonna jump right in. I want this one to be a short one. I just filmed a really long video. It is 2 o'clock in the morning. That's right, it is 2 o'clock in the morning. So we're gonna try to fly through these. Show your newest palette. I have two because I got them at the same time. I actually am on a no-buy for the entire year of 2020, so I haven't bought a single eyeshadow palette since the end of December of 2019. There's been quite a few that I would love to get my paws on, but I'm being good, I'm staying strong, even through this quarantine that we're trying to phase out of gradually, but definitely throughout the quarantine, the hunger pangs for shopping were there and I resisted. But the last two palettes I bought them together. I found them at TJ Maxx as they were just starting to roll into TJ Maxx because I think they were just starting to roll out of drugstores. And those were the Milani palettes. I still have them in their packaging. In case you're curious, I paid $4.99 for each one. I have the soft and sultry. Oh, this is gonna be so blinding. I'm so sorry. That is what that beauty looks like. She's brand new. I still have not tried this palette, even though I've already did a video on all of my new palettes that are still untouched. I'll go ahead and link that up in the cards in case you're curious what other palettes I have that I have yet to try. So that's definitely one. And the Bold Obsessions is the other one. These are definitely going to go into Shop My Stash sometime this year, sometime in 2020. Those are my newest. Oldest palette. Oh boy, this puppy is old and used and abused. This is my Naked Basics. If you guys can see, mine is like getting discolored, and that's because I have been trying to scrub it because it's got this sticky feel to this packaging. I don't know what has happened to this packaging over the years. I don't know what it was next to, what it got into. Naked Basics was my first high-end palette ever. You can see I've definitely loved on this because for a while this was my go-to palette. This would come on the subway with me. I would create easy looks right on the train. This was a palette I used when I performed. This really was, I think, my only high-end palette when I first got into makeup, when I first started watching YouTube. So I don't know when this was released, but I must have had it right around that time. I was trying to remember because I bought this and I feel like shortly after that I bought another palette we're gonna talk about in a few minutes. And I also have my Naked, the original Naked palette, but I feel like that one I actually got after I got this. I don't know what came out first. I think the Naked palette, like the fuzzy old school one, and then they came out with this, but I bought them in the opposite order. So this, from what I remember, is my oldest. My most expensive expensive? I wasn't sure how to answer this one because my most expensive as far as retail value is my Natasha Denona Sunset palette. This is the only Natasha Denona like big eyeshadow palette that I own. That's what she looks like. This was actually in my April Shop My Stash, so if you're curious to see any of the videos I've done with this palette, I will go ahead and either link them up in the cards or put them down in the description box. These palettes retail for a whopping $129. This is the only palette in my entire collection that I have actually purchased secondhand. So I did not pay nearly close to that price for this palette. I got this on Poshmark and I can't remember now off the top of my head exactly how much I paid, but I know it was not more than $60. I don't know if that counts because of the retail value or if we want to talk about what I actually paid the most money for. This is the Kat Von D Saint and Sinner palette. I still have this and honestly it's barely used. Like this could have pretty much gone into my new palettes that I haven't even used video. I have used it, but I've used maybe 6 shades from this, which is embarrassing. I pined after this palette and I really wanted it. This is when Kat Von D was at the height of her fame before, of course, everything went down that went down, and I really loved all of the aesthetic of this palette and I bought it. I bought it because I was worried it was going to totally sell out because a lot of her limited edition palettes back then did. And then for some reason, I think that's when I got overwhelmed with the amount of makeup I owned and I just stopped using a lot of things as a rebellion. And that was, I think, the turning point for me in starting to really think through my purchases and buy less. But I still was buying things, especially like discounted things from TJ Maxx and whatnot. And that was when I realized I still have a problem. I still have a shopping problem when it comes to beauty and makeup. And that's kind of how eventually this no buy year came about. But this palette is $65 retail. And this is the most expensive palette I actually purchased, whereas this is the most expensive palette I own as far as its retail value. I hope that makes sense, and I hope that that wasn't like cheating somehow. My most affordable, again, it's a kind of a two-sided question for me. I think retail value, my most affordable is this Wet n Wild palette in Rosé in the Air, which is meant to be kind of like a dupe for Modern Renaissance. I think these are about $5. I don't have the e.l.f. ones that everybody's talking about because they came out this year in 2020, and as I just mentioned, I'm not shopping this year. But as far as money I paid, this was one I got from TJ Maxx for $4, and this is the Mally Slay It palette, I think from either this year's or last year's holiday collection, and that's what that looks like. I remember I paid $4 for this. This was $3.99, and I remember that that's why I got it. I thought it was cute. I liked some of the colors, and I thought, well, for $4, even if it's not great, I'm not losing out on that much, and I wanted to try it. My everyday palette, this is a tricky one because I don't really have an everyday palette, especially this year. I'm doing Shop My Stash. I'm really trying to get to know my collection, so I am all over the place. I mean, my looks have been all over the place, but I'm trying to think back to 2019 and think back to like if I had just 5 or 10 minutes to put an eye look together, or I needed to go on an overnight trip or something like that, and I just needed something easy and effortless and small and compact, which back then was like a big thing because we could move around and travel and throw things in our bag. I remember the last one I was reaching for a lot was this Too Faced Natural Eyes palette. I still think this is amazing quality and I love these shades. This is a neutral lover's dream. It's done in these trios where you can create looks this way or you can mix and match. A really great little compact palette. So I think as of right now, until I get to know my collection better and maybe discover other palettes that are even better for everyday than this is probably the last one I use the most for that sort of purpose. My most colorful palette. I actually have a few that I was trying to choose from because I have like the Urban Decay Electric palette. I have the ABH Riviera and Alyssa Edwards, but laying them out all together and just seeing what goes into each one and just how vibrant the colors are. The ABH ones both still do have neutral shades, so I kind of removed those based off of that criteria because I felt like the Urban Decay Electric and this palette that I did end up actually choosing have only bright colors. So if we're talking about my most colorful palette, I felt like I have to give it to the Warrior 3 by Juvia's Place. This palette is like it's what I call my rainbow palette. This is the only palette I think in my collection that would fit that bill. So this is my rainbow palette, and honestly, considering I don't usually wear color all that much. I mean, I like experimenting with it, but I usually am still fairly neutral. I mean, I know you might not think that from a lot of the YouTube looks that I do, but I feel like I also am a bit more bold and brave and experiment more when I know I'm about to film videos in like my daily life. This is not a palette I'm normally gonna grab for unless I want an accent color. So I think somebody like me doesn't really need anything more than this as far as rainbow colors are concerned. And I do think this is my most colorful palette. My smallest palette, again, I don't have the e.l.f. ones, but I did purchase this before my no-buy year. This maybe even was my newest palette. I think the Milani ones were. I think I bought this before I bought the Milani ones, but right now, you know, I can't go back in time and tell you guys exactly, but I do know this is my smallest palette. This is the Natasha Denona Mini Gold. It has 5 shades, as you can see, and it is tiny. It is just absolutely teeny tiny, but honestly, I love this size. I love it. I love that it still has the 5 shades instead of 4 like the e.l.f. ones do. I haven't tried those, so I can't tell you guys anything about those. I know this is $25. I know a lot of people think this is still too expensive for 5 teeny tiny little shades, but I think they are so well curated. I think the color stories are great. You can create multiple looks from just this one little tiny palette. I've been really loving on this palette. My largest, again, I kind of have a tie, sort of again cheating because I'm just not sure honestly which one's my largest. I want to say it's probably the Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette. A lot of people have been mentioning this as their largest palette for a reason. I mean, it also has 35 shades. So based off of how many shades I have in one palette, this is definitely the winner. Based on size, however, I have a tie because the BH Zodiac palette might seem like it is smaller, but it is also wider. So I feel like as far as like square footage is concerned, these are about the same. The only thing is the Zodiac palette definitely has less shades. This only has 25, I believe. And that is what she looks like. Beautiful. Again, another one of those palettes that is brand new that I have yet to try. This is definitely getting pulled into my Shop My Stash very soon. I think this is probably the more accurate answer, but I just wasn't sure. Like, are we going on size or are we going on number of shadows? This is, I guess, the clear winner because it kind of wins on both. I guess I just wanted to show you guys more palettes. I wanted to talk about more palettes, so I'm kind of cheating, but oh well. Best memory. This is another tough one because I have a few palettes with quite a few memories attached to them. The tie is between the Lorac Pro or the Urban Decay Electric. Urban Decay Electric, I have great memories for because it was a gift. It was a gift from somebody very special. Also, it's what got me to try color for the first time. This was my first and only really colorful palette for years and years and years. So I do have just a lot of sentimental value from this palette just because of what it means to me, who it was given to me by. It kind of got me out of my initial comfort zone of being a beginner when it came to makeup, but trying color and following tutorials. I remember I actually recreated a look that Jaclyn Hill did with this palette and then did a photo shoot with that look. And I posted it to Instagram. That was my very first Instagram photo ever, years and years and years ago. And I'm to this day not very active on Instagram. And then the other palette that I have a lot of memories attached to is this palette. It was my first like full-size high-end palette. It has traveled to so many places with me. It is one that if I'm ever in a bind and not sure what to do, I can pull this out and come up with super easy, super quick looks. And one of the best memories I have attached to this palette is I had a friend who lives in Russia, in Moscow. A a fellow pianist who was in town, and she was doing a photo shoot for an upcoming album, for an upcoming CD that she recorded, and I did her makeup for that photo shoot, and I used this palette, and I still really have warm memories of that day, of the fact that she trusted me to do her makeup, and she liked how it came out, and she loved the photos, and it was just a really nice day, and I still remember that day, even if it was quite a few years ago. So this palette holds a very special place in my heart, and always has and always will. Palette worth the hype. All right, so for palette worth the hype, I went with the ABH Sultry because I feel like so many people do hype this palette, and it really is an amazing, stunning palette. I love this color story with the neutral and more cool tones that, of course, now coming back, so I'm excited to use this palette a lot more. I love how it has these unexpected colors like slate and bloom, but at the same time it has birch, which is a very neutral, almost like on the warm end of transition colors for this palette. Twig is a great transition color. These shimmers, I mean, these shimmers are just absolutely stunning. They're just pack such a punch. They're so metallic, they're so gorgeous, and yes, they're all neutral, and maybe some will say, well, you know, they're kind of similar-ish, like why did we need so many neutrals, like, you know, Cinder, Antique? Did we really need both? Yes, because they're really different. One is warmer, one is cooler. Then you've got Steampunk that's more gold, and you've got Rose Quartz that's definitely more rosy. You've got Amber that almost has like a grainy, grungy shift to it. This is a great palette, and I definitely think it has been worth all the hype that it has gotten over the past couple of years, or however long it's been out. I've heard that, you know, sometimes you can still find it at like TJ Maxx or Marshalls or in random stores online. So I think once in a while you can still come across Sultry, but it is one of those palettes that unfortunately is not really available anymore, as are a lot of my palettes, because I haven't really been shopping for eyeshadow palettes in a while. If you really think about it, I feel like most of my more recent palettes have all been TJ Maxx, Marshalls purchases, and I haven't really bought anything like new in a few years. So, all right, not worth the hype. Ooh, this one I'm going to probably get roasted for. I ended up actually selling mine, and that is the ABH Modern Renaissance. Don't come for me. I know it is a classic on here. I know it is iconic. I know it started a whole movement. I get it. And when I bought it, I thought I was gonna fall madly in love with it. I loved the packaging. I loved the color story. I thought I was gonna get so much use out of it, and it really pained me to sell it. Maybe I bought it too late. Maybe I just wasn't like on that train early enough to fully feel the impact of that eyeshadow palette and what it did in the beauty community. But honestly, like if we look at the Rosé in the Air, which is kind of the drugstore dupe for it, here's what happened with me and Modern Renaissance. I felt like the neutrals that were in there, I had elsewhere. Yes, maybe they weren't the ABH formula, but I felt like if I really want a neutral look, I have so many palettes I could already go to for that look. So I bought it for those gorgeous redder tones, and I think Modern Renaissance had what, like 2 or 3 of those, whereas this only has 1. Every time I would reach into that palette, I would always use those shades, and I kept trying to make them work because that was to me what that palette essentially was about, those berry tones, and I just didn't like them. I just didn't like those specific shades. I was never wowed with my look. I never felt super confident using those colors. So again, maybe it was just me and lack of makeup skills and user error. But for me personally, I just didn't feel like that palette lived up to the hype. And I figured, you know, this tag is about my experience with the eyeshadow palettes and not the overall consensus. So for me personally, Modern Renaissance, unfortunately, was just not worth the hype. My favorite palette from my favorite brand. This is a tough one because I love a lot of my eyeshadow palettes, and I'm still getting to know a lot of my eyeshadow palettes, so I feel like these answers might change. But as of right now, and as of the amount of time I've spent with a lot of my palettes, my favorite brand I think would have to be Juvia's Place. They were my Shop My Stash brand, eyeshadow brand for the months of February and March, because I have 7 palettes from them, and I went ahead and actually came back and ranked all those palettes. The one that I ranked the highest, and for now that still holds true, is the Tribe. I believe quite a lot of people have been naming this as their top palette if Juvia's Place happens to be their favorite brand, and I have to agree. I love Juvia's Place because they have unique color stories, but the formula is buildable. A few eyeshadows in every palette that pack a punch like instantly, but a lot of them, they don't end up making you look like a clown right from the get-go. And then this palette, I think it's quite neutral, even though it looks like it's bright. Yes, this row is very bright. You've got this lime, green, yellow, this orange, and this green, but again, they're not so intimidating that you can't work with them and make them a little more subdued. And then you've got all of these that are just so beautiful and, in my opinion, so wearable. This shade right here is so stunning, and I do love these bright mattes, and I love these deeper bluey greens. This is just, it's a fantastic palette. It was just put together so well that there's that shade that I love so much. There's nothing that I can say that is not positive about this palette. If you love greens and browns and blues, grungier marine type blues, I think you would really enjoy this palette. And Juvia's Place overall, I think, has a great formula. I do find that with my aging eyelids, being, you know, almost 40, I do find that some of their shimmers can be a little heavy, like they can really show off the texture on my eyelids. I just still love the shine, and I love the colors too much to care. I've heard that, like, for example, Persona Cosmetics has a fantastic formula, especially if you want like that more smooth appearance, and maybe one day I'll get a chance to try their formula, but it's not going to happen in 2020 because I can't buy anything right now. So as of right now, my favorite brand has to be Juvia's Place. Okay, my most used would definitely have to be my Lorac Pro Matte. Yes, it's boring. Yes, it's in my project pan, so I'm not even sure I want to show it to you guys, but it's definitely used. All right, I'll show it to you because I don't even know which video is going up first, but you can tell this thing has been used for many years. It's light, it's compact, it's easy. I don't mind having all matte looks. I used to always just bring this like as a companion palette to anything else that I want, because I know that I have everything I need in here. I can see myself in the future, if they're still making this, repurchasing this just because of its size and practicality for my personal use, skin tone, etc. So this is definitely my most used. And I know some creators did a bonus question, and I really wanted to include this bonus question because I do have one palette in my collection that I love, and I feel like it is very underrated. I feel like very few people talk about this palette. Some have even decluttered it from the declutters I've watched, and it is one of my favorites, and that is the Alamar Cosmetics, the Reina del Caribe palette. Volume 1, I think there's a volume 2, I haven't tried that one, but this I got a while back in my BoxyCharm, and I am so thrilled that I did. I love this palette. You can create such wildly interesting, unusual looks with this palette while still being wearable, easy, not over the top, especially if you're one who doesn't like too much color. I feel like these blues just give you enough to spice it up if you want. These two shimmers are some of the most beautiful shimmers I have in my entire collection, at least as of right now from what I've tried in my collection. And I feel like these four mattes just give you also everything you could possibly want. I feel like a lot of skin tones can use this because you have this transition color that is light enough if you go in light-handed for a really fair skin tones, but if you're deeper and you just build this up a bit, I think this could be a wonderful transition. You have Tropico that stands out even more, and then you've got these two really gorgeous deeper shades that you can really work with no matter what your skin tone is. I love this palette. This El Malecon or whatever that color, oh my god, that color, look at that color. that is just, seriously, love this palette. I think it is really underrated. I one day would love to try the volume 2, because if it's anything like this, I feel like this color story speaks to me a bit more, but I'm hoping in the future to try more from Alamar Cosmetics. That is all I'm gonna say. And that is where I am going to end this video. If you've done this tag and you make videos, please let me know down below. I would love to go watch it. I've been watching quite a lot, but I can never get enough of an eyeshadow tag. I will watch every single one. So please let me know if you have done this, and if you don't have a channel, and if you want to just leave me some answers down below in the description, I would love it. I'll try to remember to include the questions in the description box, so that if you guys even want, you can just copy and paste it and put your answers in. I will also, of course, make sure to link the original videos that were done by Samantha March and Ali Glines. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you will consider subscribing, and if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. I hope you guys are all doing really well. I thank you so much for being here and for watching, and I cannot wait to see you in my next video. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye.
I am going to, what am I gonna do? I am going to make some space. Oh, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 maybe, or maybe that's a swatch, I don't even know. That. Am I still filming? Yes.